Hi, I'm Ron from Ron's Painting, and today we're going to go over the procedures we go through when painting the exterior of a home to do it properly. On day one, when we first arrive, we unload all of our equipment. We make sure everything's gas, we pull out the chlorine, get it set by the machine, and then we start pressure cleaning the exterior of the home. Our first step in pressure cleaning is to rinse down all the vegetation with clean water to ensure that once we start applying bleach to the house, we're not killing the vegetation. Then we start pressure cleaning the house. We apply chlorine mixed with water on the exterior stucco, fascia, and soffits. Whether we're going to paint it or not, everything gets bleached to make sure we kill all the mildew, because without killing the mildew, your paint will not adhere to the surfaces. Once the bleach is on the house, then we go back with high pressure and we start pressure cleaning the exterior surfaces that are to be painted and the surfaces that are not to be painted. And in doing the soffits and the wood surfaces of your fascia, we take extra care to make sure we don't damage any of the wood or the metal surfaces by using the high pressure. While I am pressure cleaning, I have one of my employees take a little spray bottle and fill it up with chlorine, and what he does is he goes around the foundation and sprays the foundation where there's a big buildup of mildew with chlorine directly. This makes sure that when I come around and pressure clean the house, I'm able to remove the stubborn areas of mildew and we don't have a problem when we get ready to paint. After everything has been pressure cleaned, then we go back and take the chlorine out of the hose and we make sure we rinse the whole house down with fresh water, trying to remove as much of the chlorine not only off the vegetation, but we also rinse down the windows to make sure that we don't have any chlorine left on the glass surfaces. Once the building is completely pressure cleaned and everything's rinsed down, then we go home for the first day, because I want everything to dry properly for the second day before we start doing our preparations. On the second day, after the house has been pressure cleaned and everything is dry, first thing we start doing is we start covering up all the windows, the doors, screens, aluminum surfaces that are not going to be painted with plastic and or drop cloths. We make sure that along the floors we put tape with paper, which gives me about a 1-foot barrier, so that when we lay a drop cloth down and we're doing our painting, if the drop cloth spray comes up from the mist of the paint, it does not get any paint on the floor. So we take care in covering all metal surfaces, all floors, doors, casings, windows, and aluminum screens to make sure that we don't get any paint on it when we're doing our painting. We also take care in covering all the vegetations with drop cloths. So we do go that extra mile to make sure everything is covered properly, to make sure that when we are all done and we take the tape off, the homeowner is happy because there's no paint where it's not supposed to be. After the house is pressure cleaned and it's dried, what I do is I go around and I rub my hand down the stucco surface to see if it's chalky. And here you can see chalk on my hand. What that is that's paint breakdown, because of the Florida sun, it just breaks the paint down and it becomes chalky. Once the house has been properly prepared, then we apply the chalk sealer. And the chalk sealer goes on clear or milky white, and we just put it on just like water, and it just drips down the side. But as it drips down the side of the stucco, what it's doing is it's soaking into the chalk. And once it's dry, you cannot even tell that the chalk sealer is on the house. But what this does is this ensures that the paint sticks to the surface, because if you don't put a chalk sealer on, that's like painting over dirt, and the paint will not adhere to the surface. After we've got everything prepped with plastic and paper and tape, and we have some of the drop cloths down, then we start going around and doing our caulking and our patching. Now the caulking I use, it's an elastomeric caulk, and the reason I use an elastomeric is because once it has dried, it stays elastic. It will expand and contract between the two surfaces that I have caulked. We don't do our windows yet, because we can't do them because we have everything covered with plastic. So what we do is we caulk everything where the stucco meets the soffits, where the stucco meets your front and rear lanai ceilings, around your doors, around the water spigots, anything that protrudes outside of the house that there may be a gap where moisture can get in. If it's a bigger crack, we will use an oil-based elastomeric urethane that dries just a little bit harder, and it's a little bit better on your bigger surfaces. Then we go around, we do all the patching of the cracks in the stucco. Now a lot of times you can't really see them, so what we do is we make sure that we try to stay on the shady side of the house when we do our patching, because if it's sunny out, a lot of times you can't see those hairline cracks. The key to the elastomeric products is making sure you're putting it on properly, but also making sure it cures properly, because if it doesn't cure properly and you apply paint to the surface before it's cured, it loses its elasticity and it's not going to do the job that it's supposed to do when you apply it. Once the house has been totally caulked, patched, and prepped, and it's cured overnight, then we come in and we start our painting. When we paint, we spray it on and we back roll it in. And here you'll see that I am spraying the areas behind the, well, actually I'm spraying the whole outside of the house. And as I'm spraying, I have Armando flying right next to me with an 1.5 inch napped roller cover. He is rolling the paint into the stucco surface, because the surface is very, very coarse, and we want to make sure we cover all them little nooks and crannies to make sure that we have a good coverage of paint on everything. When I'm spraying the exterior of a home, I always use an exterior satin versus a flat finish. When you use a flat finish outside and it dries, over time it has a tendency to get dirty, and the mildew has a tendency to grow a lot quicker and stay on the surface because it is a flat finish. But by using a satin finish, when it rains, it washes off that dirt, and the mildew has a harder time growing on it because it's a little bit of a slicker surface. So that's why I always use a satin finish when I paint the outside of a house, and I always trim it out with a semi-gloss finish. That way you have a little bit of a different sheen between your banding and your stucco, and your banding color usually stands out a little bit more for your homeowner. Now, a lot of times homeowners will not want to use this paint. They would rather use just a good grade of an exterior paint. And I always use Flex Bond. I've been using Flex Bond for over 30 years. Flex Bond is a very good paint, and it's made for Florida. And I use their exterior satin and semi-gloss. So you cannot go wrong with a good coat of Flex Bond. The lower areas of this house in particular, what we did is I spray it by hand with the smaller spray gun, because this enables me to get in behind the bushes very well and make sure everything is sprayed, gets a good coat of paint. When it comes time to spray in the upper portion of the house, I change guns, and what I do is I have a gun with a wand, and I'm able to spray the upper areas. And once again, I have Armando following right behind me, making sure that everything is rolled into all the stucco surfaces. I'm not too worried about doing all my cut-ins at this point. My biggest concern right now is spraying the paint on the house, making sure I get good coverage on all the stucco and everything's rolled into all of the surfaces. Once the house has been totally sprayed, then I have one of my guys following behind us, and he starts doing all of the brush work. And there's areas that he just brushes, and there's areas that he'll use a little sausage roller. We just can't really get in there with a big 1.5 inch roller, but we want to make sure we do all our cutting in. And like here on the back porch, you see that the homeowner had a nice mural of a flower painted back there. We actually take the time and we take a little bit smaller brush, but we make sure that we do not interfere with the painted mural on there, and it makes the new paint job looks like that mural was painted after the house was painted. So it's very, very important to take the extra care of the belongings of the homeowner to make sure that everything is just right. Now here's an area of the house that we really couldn't spray because of the satellite antenna. So what we do is, once the house has been sprayed, once again we go back and we start cutting the areas in with a brush and roller. And here what we do is we're up on the ladder and I'm cutting in the side of the house to make sure I don't get any paint on the satellite dish, but we're also starting to paint the fascia and the gutters in the trim color. Once I'm sure that we're not going to get any paint on the glass surfaces, we take the plastic off the windows. Then we go ahead and we caulk around the windows. We let the caulk set up overnight and then put the final coat of paint around the windows. We're painting with a semi-gloss finish on the banding around the windows and the banding around the house, and we're doing this by brush and by roller. This ensures that once again we get good coverage in all the little nooks and crannies of the stucco. We pull back the dirt from the foundation. We take a dusting brush and we clean off any dirt sediment that's on the house, and then we cut in the base of the house. Now we do this one of the very, very last things, because even though we've cleaned it off, you still get some dirt into your paintbrush. So we make sure that we don't take this dirty paint and paint something like around a window. So we always do this at the bottom of the house, one of the very last things that I paint on the exterior of the house. Once it is dried, then we go back and we push the dirt back up against the foundation, so it gives it a nice fresh look. On this particular house, I used a new paint that I was the very first painter in the country to use. It's made by Akron Paint and Varnish, and it's a paint that's guaranteed that the color will not fade for at least 15 years. So if you can imagine taking Teflon, like a Teflon of a frying pan, and wrapping the outside of your house with it, that's what this paint does. It seals in your house, it limits the mildew from growing on your house, and the particles in this paint are so fine, that's what enables the paint to hold its color retention. So once the house is painted, you won't have to paint again for at least 15 years, and you don't have to pressure clean nearly as often because it's a slicker surface and mildew will not adhere to the paint like normal paints do. If you notice that while we were pressure cleaning the exterior of the house on the back by the pool, a lot of the paint had come off because of a bad paint job the first time it was done. And a lot of the particles of the paint got into the pool. So after the house had been painted, I had Joe Mitchell from Pool Pros come in to make sure that the pool was spotless so that when the homeowners came home, they were able to enjoy their pool. Once the house is done, we always take a walk around the exterior of the house, making sure that we really haven't missed anything, because when the house is this big, there's always just a little bit of an area you overlooked. So what we do is we just walk around, we make sure we've got everything covered at the bottom, all the foundation of the house has been painted properly. We check all the windows to make sure we've got good coverage on the windows. We check around the doors, make sure everything's covered very well. In this particular case, when we painted the doors on this house, we made sure we sanded them very good. We tacked the doors, and when I say tacked them, we use a tack rag to get off any dust. And then this house, we sprayed the doors with the exterior banding color, which is a semi-gloss. That way the doors and the banding matched. A lot of times we don't have the luxury of spraying the doors, so the doors have to be painted by hand, and that's usually done with a brush. But we always walk around the outside making sure we have everything covered, all the surfaces are covered with a good coat of paint, and all the lines are clean and crisp, so that when a homeowner looks at the house, they're very happy with the paint job. And it's almost like a piece of art, and we want to make sure everything is clean and crisp. From the pressure cleaning, to the caulking, to the patching, to the painting. This is what an exterior paint job looks like when it's done by the professionals at Ron's Painting.